Before this video starts, I want to apologize for the audio quality you guys are about to hear. We had air conditioning in the background and kind of messed around with the audio for about a fourth of the video. The video audio is still fine, it's just our mics might sound a little fuzzy. So I just want to give you guys a heads up. So enjoy the video.
Hello everybody, it is Beans, and we have
Cookie.
this is a collab. We are gonna be watching some video or reacting to let me actually get the
When corruption pushes people too far in history.
yes. We have You Don't Know, Serious History. I've watched a couple videos of him, and you know what, he does a good job in explaining the history of and whatnot. So anytime if you want to pause the video, just do it. Okay.
Okay. This is my first time watching these videos. So let's see.
It's the end of 1945, and Bill White is riding a bus heading to McMinn County, Tennessee. A few months earlier, the Empire of Japan had officially surrendered, bringing an end to World War II. The bus Bill is on is filled with fellow veterans who had fought in the war, and having survived the most brutal conflict in history, they're unsurprisingly celebrating making it home alive. Bill himself was a veteran of the Battle of Tarawa and Guadalcanal, two of the bloodiest conflicts in the Pacific Theater, and like everyone else on the bus, he was excited to finally be back on American soil. Soon the soldiers see a familiar sign up ahead and begin to cheer. "Welcome to Athens, the friendly city." The men were finally home. But as their bus pulled into the station, these veterans did not receive the warm welcome they were expecting. The doors open, and immediately armed deputies storm onto the bus and begin harassing the soldiers. Bill watches as some of his fellow GIs are stripped of the cash they have on them, cuffed, and arrested for intoxication. The Athens that these brave men had left years ago was gone, and in its place was a living hell.
When playing games on PC, do you ever wonder?
A decade earlier in 1936, while many of these returning vets were still children, a wealthy and well-connected man named Paul Cantrell had got himself elected as sheriff of the town. His main campaign promise was to get rid of a pretty dumb law called the fee system, which allowed him and his deputies to get paid a fee for every arrest they made. Most people in the town agreed.
What? That's like
you have to pay like $25 to arrest people.
yeah, like wouldn't you just go around arresting people for fun then?
Yeah. You need like permission of the judge to like actually arrest someone.
No, not even that.
Yeah.
It's saying okay, let's say like I pull you over, right?
Yeah.
I pull you over and it's I say and I arrest you, right? You don't need the judge's approval to arrest somebody.
Oh no, like but like put them in like
But to put them in jail,
in jail,
To
yeah, that's
convict
what I
them,
meant.
yeah. But no, if let's say, you know, I you're just walking down the road, right?
Yeah.
And I arrest you. Well, I'm gonna get paid because of that. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just the start of corruption right there.
That this system would be easy to exploit if someone corrupt ever became sheriff. So they voted Cantrell in by a very slim margin to fulfill his campaign promise. Well, as soon as he was in, Cantrell did two things. One, he began rigging every future election to ensure he would always win. And two, he reneges on his campaign promise to get rid of the fee system, and instead began to arrest as many citizens as he could to exploit it. He would log up to 115 arrests in a single weekend, and in the span of 10 years, the sheriff's department collected over $300,000 in fees. That's about $5 million in today's money, and all of it went straight into the pockets of Cantrell and his henchmen. Eventually, Cantrell goes on to become a state senator in 1942, but he puts people in place to ensure his political machine can continue to run Athens. When the war breaks out, McMinn County sends about 10% of its population to fight in the war, and while the young men were away fighting overseas, the Cantrell machine tightened its grip on the town. By 1946, they had complete control of the government, elections, and the local media. Many throughout the town clung to the only hope they had, that one day, when the GIs got back, things would be different. Now adults, the returning veterans, were getting their first taste of just how bad the corruption in their town had become. They had all
Imagine
received a
coming
lump
back-
sum from the government.
Imagine coming back from a war, like thinking, oh, finally I'm gonna be home and relaxing.
When there's not even a home that you recognize, everything
And-
has changed.
Yeah, and then you just straight up violence when you get to your old town. Just
Yeah.
straight up violence.
That's
So sad.
yeah.
Known as mustering out pay for their time served in the war, and this extra cash made them prime targets of the sheriff's department. Many vets were arrested in bars for intoxication or on the street for minor infractions. The GIs grow tired of being constantly harassed and paying these fees, so they begin meeting in secret to drink and talk about the state of their town. In these meetings, they decide that this corrupt political machine needs to be broken, and so they come up with an idea. They create a nonpartisan party called the GI ticket and run 3 Republicans and 2 Democrat servicemen in various races with the goal to get Cantrell's men out of office and end his control of the town. Excited with their new mission, the veterans take to the streets to campaign. They drive around with loudspeakers and go door knocking to hand out flyers. They promise the people of Athens that despite all the previous elections, this time their votes will be counted as cast. Filled with hope that the political machine that ruined their town would finally be stopped, the townspeople come out in droves to support the GIs. But word gets to Cantrell, and not wanting to give up the racket he had run for over a decade, he decides to come back to Athens and run for sheriff again against a veteran named Knox Henry. Calls are made, and the local deputies increase their harassment of the GIs. Threatening phone calls are made in the middle of the night, and other veterans are assaulted on the streets while putting up their campaign posters. Troubled by this, Bill White asks his fellow GIs at their weekly meeting, "Do you think they're gonna let you win this election? Those people been taking these elections for years with a bunch of armed thugs. If you never got the guts enough to stand up and fight fire with fire, you ain't gonna win." His fellow veterans disagreed. They had promised the people of Athens a free and fair election, and they all believed that it was going to happen. But Bill feared the worst, and soon all of his fears would come true. In the week leading up to the election, the town sheriff, Pat Mansfield, who had deep ties to Cantrell, deputizes 200 new agents. Many were
What?
200 deputies.
It's like it's like exporting people just for making them to vote.
No, it's just like
Importing
it's
people.
it just allows them to like it's like it just it gives them like the permission to
Mhm.
you know what do you call it,
Like arrest.
to arrest and do stuff like
Yeah.
that. If they were just regular henchmen, then
Mhm.
it's just like your average.
Yeah, if it's like a president, it would be like vice president. So it
That's-
doesn't have as much power as
Yeah.
the sheriff, but it will still have power.
Exactly, they have more power as a deputy than as just just a regular henchman.
Yeah.
Yeah, but 200 is crazy.
ex-convicts and criminals themselves, and nearly all of them were from
Ex-convicts.
out of state. Regardless, the veterans remained undeterred and continued to go out into the community, promising the people that their votes will be counted as cast and helping many citizens pay the poll tax required to vote.
Oh, all right, editor, edit this out, please.
Finally, election day arrives on August 1st, 1946, and Mansfield and Cantrell send their 200 armed deputies out to the 4 polling stations in town. It did not take long for the trouble to begin, as the first veteran poll watcher is arrested at 9:30 a.m. At 3 p.m., a black man named Tom Gillespie enters his polling location and is stopped by a deputy named Windy Wise, who hurls a racial slur at him and tells him that he can't vote here. Gillespie insists on his rights as a citizen, but before he can finish, Windy Wise beats him to the ground with brass knuckles.
Damn.
In a panic,
Brass
Gillespie
knuckles?
drops his ballot and tries to run for the door, but Wise, wanting to send a message, draws his pistol and shoots him in the back. In other polling locations, GIs are shocked as they watch minors vote unquestioned, and when they step in to challenge these ballots, they are beaten and arrested by Mansfield's deputies. The day ends, and the veterans watch as Cantrell's men begin to take ballot boxes to the county jail to be counted in private. They realize that they had all been made liars and fools. Defeated, Many of the GIs go home while a handful of others return to their campaign headquarters. There, Bill White watches as the small group of dejected veterans slump silently in their chairs, and this pisses him off. He stands and shouts, "You call yourself GIs? You go over there and fight for 3 and 4 years. You come back and you let a bunch of draft dodgers who stayed here where it was safe and you are making it safe for them push you around? If you people don't stop this, and now is the time and place, you people wouldn't make a pimple on a fighting GI's ass. Get your guns." The soldiers look up at Bill and realize he had been right all along. They rush out into the night and find their fellow veterans and tell them to get their guns and meet back at headquarters. The night was not done yet, and within an hour, every veteran in town had returned, armed and ready to fight. They head to the National Guard Armory and convince the man on guard to let them borrow the weapons stored there. 70 additional rifles and 2 Thompson submachine guns are soon loaded onto a truck, and together the GIs head to the county jail where Cantrell and his men were secretly counting the ballots. They arrive at the jail at 9 p.m. to find it barricaded and guarded by 55 deputies. Bill splits his group in two, and with military precision, the veterans take their positions around the building. The GIs shout for Cantrell to bring out the ballot boxes, a request that he defiantly refuses. With Election Day coming to an end, and with no other option, Bill White draws his pistol and fires the first shot. Immediately, his men follow his lead, and the jail is pelted with rounds from every veteran in the town. The submachine guns open fire, tearing holes into the walls of the building.
Imagine living there, you know, and just being like a civilian and just hearing just a bunch of gunshots.
I mean, yeah, but I feel like they will be like used to it since it was like pretty violent before.
Oh yeah, but
I mean,
yeah, but
it's the whole different thing.
it's like
I don't know.
here, like you're laying down and sleeping, all of a sudden you just hear a bunch of just like gunfire. You're thinking a whole war is going on right next to you.
And many of the deputies run inside for cover. Cantrell's thugs try to fire back, but against these battle-hardened veterans, their attempts were
Oh
laughable.
yeah, they're losing. What? Wait, I know what's coming.
I don't think that happened
Yeah.
in real life.
I know what's coming. More old the tanks. Sorry, Brody, but anyways.
In gunfire, the townspeople begin to rush out of their homes to see what is going on. And when they find out the GIs had Cantrell and his men trapped in the jail, they erupt into cheers.
Oh, that's
They rush
crazy.
down and take cover from behind parked cars and buildings, not wanting to miss Cantrell's end. Other citizens took this as the sign to join the fight, and they began rioting, flipping over police cruisers and
It reminds me when in Europe they will like kill people in front of the like in a plaza. Like all the kids and people would just go to the plaza and see how they hang people.
Oh, the executions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like
That's-
everybody just went outside happy to see the end of the guy.
Yeah.
burning any car with out-of-state plates that they assumed to belong to the new deputies. As the battle wears on into the early morning hours, the GIs begin using Molotov
Wait, they just burned random cars? What if
Yeah.
what if the guy's sleeping and wakes up and his car's just scorched?
cocktails to coax Cantrell out, but they are unable to throw them far enough to reach the jail. At 2 a.m., an ambulance arrives at the scene, and the GIs assume that they are there to treat the injured inside the building. They hold their fire and watch two shadowy figures jump into the back of the ambulance before it speeds away. It was only later discovered that these two men were Cantrell and Mansfield, who used the ambulance to run from the vets. Once the ambulance was gone, the veterans began taping sticks of dynamite together and throwing them at the jail like grenades. The first attempt lands on the car of one of the deputies, and it is blasted high into the night sky. The crowd goes wild as the veterans launch 3 more bundles of TNT into the air. One lands on the roof of the jail, blowing a hole into it. Another blasts a hole in the jail wall, and the final bundle lands on Sheriff Mansfield's car and blows it to bits, causing the crowd to go even crazier. By 3:30 a.m., the remaining deputies trapped in the jail had been blasted into submission, and they surrendered to Bill White and his men. The veterans lowered their weapons and stepped forward to accept the surrender. But the townspeople, who had endured a decade under Cantrell's thumb, were not satisfied. They wanted their own justice, and they rushed into the jail, throwing off the GIs who tried to restrain them. Windy Wise, the racist deputy that shot Tom Gillespie in the back, was found, and he became the favorite target of the mob, who beat him unconscious. The veterans entered the jail and found rigged ballots that would have delivered Cantrell a landslide win. When they recounted the actual votes, every single GI ticket candidate had won their race. As the dawn breaks, the town of Athens is overcome with the collective euphoria that they had not felt in over a decade. Cantrell's machine was gone. Despite stealing weapons from a federal armory and blasting holes into the local jail, none of the veterans involved in the Battle of Athens were ever tried for a crime. In fact, the only person to face any jail time from the event was the deputy, Windy Wise. Johnson County War. It's the 1880s in the Wyoming Territory, and things are going great for cattle baron Frank Wolcott. For the past 10 years, he and his friends had figured out how to use the vast amounts of public lands in the region to create what was essentially an infinite money glitch.
Wait, so did they ever catch the other guys then?
I don't think so.
Bruh.
That's why they probably thought they left in the ambulance, because they couldn't find them. Because it was supposed to be in the jail. But after all the deputies came out and you don't find a body, then you probably think, oh, the two shadowy figures that left are probably those.
Oh, probably, yeah.
Every year, Wolcott and the other large cattle ranchers would release their animals into the wild and let them graze on the open range all year before rounding them back up again in the fall. By doing this, Wolcott and his friends didn't have to pay for the land, feed, and water for their animals, giving them ridiculous profit margins. This made them all insanely rich, and so they formed the Wyoming Stock Growers Association, or WSGA for short, and through this organization, they would socialize at the exclusive Cheyenne Club, rubbing elbows with the local and national elite. They had money, power, and influence, and felt untouchable. But everything changes in 1867 when the Union Pacific Railroad reaches Wyoming and thousands of settlers begin flooding into the territory to take advantage of the Homestead Act of 1862. Many of these homesteaders were Civil War veterans, recently freed slaves, and other people who were down on their luck, and they were all looking to start fresh out west. These homesteaders quickly claimed their lands, and unfortunately for Frank Wolcott, these lands were the same ones he and his friends were using for their insanely profitable cattle businesses. Homesteaders began putting up fences, blocking off food and water for their own crops and animals, and soon, many of them began trying to raise cattle themselves. Seemingly overnight, the money printing machine that Wolcott and his friends had enjoyed for 2 decades began to sputter. Don't get me wrong, they were still making a ton of money, but this decrease in profits was simply unacceptable. So, in an attempt to put a stop to all this, Wolcott pushes for the passing of the Maverick Act, which made his organization, the WSGA, the official owner of any unbranded calf. See, mix-ups were common in this free-range ranching system, and homesteaders often ended up with unbranded cattle in their herd at roundup. With mix-ups so common, this new bill essentially turned every independent rancher into a cattle rustler, which on the frontier was a crime punishable by death. The bill passes, and in the summer of 1889, a 29-year-old homesteader named Ella Watson is found with a few extra unbranded cattle in her herd. Her neighbor, a member of Wolcott's organization, finds out and immediately reports her and her husband to the organization for cattle rustling. Within a few days, a mob of WSGA ranchers armed with rifles show up on her doorstep, and they order Ella and her husband into a wagon at gunpoint. A neighbor watches the event unfold and, fearing the worst, races to the sheriff's office to report what is happening, and they ride as quickly as they can back to Watson's ranch. When they get there, they are horrified to see Wolcott's men in the process of tightening nooses around Ella.
We're stealing cattle?
Oh,
not even stealing. Yeah. They just wandered in.
And they don't know who it is.
Bro, what the hell?
Her husband's necks. The mob had decided to skip the legal formalities and deal with these cattle rustlers right then and there. The sheriff quickly draws his pistol and orders the men to stop. The mob turns to look at him for a second, and then they raise their rifles and begin to fire. The sheriff runs for cover, and a gunfight breaks out at the ranch. The sheriff is vastly out. The sheriff runs for cover, and a gunfight breaks out at the ranch.
What did cow do? What the hell? They care for the cow so much, why they shoot him?
The sheriff is vastly outnumbered, and Wolcott's men are doing a good job keeping him pinned down. He can't see what is happening, but soon the firing stops and the mob goes quiet. The sheriff steps out from his hiding spot and sees Ella and her husband hanging from a tree, dead.
Damn.
In the following weeks, the sheriff tracks down and arrests the men responsible for the lynching of Ella Watson and her husband, and a trial date is set. But witnesses for the case quickly begin dying of mysterious causes. Some are found poisoned, and others simply vanish without a trace. Wolcott's organization had just gotten away with murder, and this enrages the homesteaders in the area, who retaliate by lynching the range detective who accused Watson of rustling. Feeling that justice was served, the homesteaders thought it would bring an end to the violence, but they were dead wrong. The cattle barons immediately send out gunmen to lynch more alleged rustlers, and they use their corrupt political ties to ensure any one of their henchmen that is arrested gets set free. This works for a while, and Wolcott and his gang of elites maintain their grip on the open range. But in 1891, an independent rancher named Nate Champion, who was sick of the corruption, forms his own cattle organization to break Wolcott's monopoly. The homesteaders begin banding together, and soon his group organizes their own cattle roundups outside of the control of the WSGA. To Wolcott, this could not be allowed. Champion had to be stopped before it was too late. So, he hires a hit squad and sends them to deal with the rebellious cowboy for good. On a cold, moonless night in November, 6 shadowy figures surround a small cabin that Nate was staying in for the night. Awakened by noises outside, Champion listened carefully with his eyes closed as 2 men opened the front door and walked into the cabin. As they approach his bed, Nate can feel his heart beating out of his chest, and he slowly moves his hand under his pillow to grab a gun he had hidden there. He fears the worst, and when he hears the men draw their pistols, he knows what they are here to do. In one motion, Nate turns and fires on the would-be assassins. A gunfight breaks out inside the cabin, and he kills the 2 men. The men waiting outside hear the gunshots and run away from the scene before Nate is able to make it outside. The news of the failed assassination makes it back to Wolcott, and he is enraged. He appoints a man wanted for murder in Texas to head up what was essentially a lynch mob he called Wolcott's Regulators. He gives this mob a list of 70 homesteaders that he wanted dead, and the first name on the list was Nate Champion. On a dark April night, Wolcott and his regulators ride into Johnson County and cut every telegraph line out of the town to prevent any calls for help. They then make their way towards KC Ranch, where Champion and his friends were staying. At sunrise, 2 of Nate's friends head outside to fetch some water and are surprised to find Wolcott's regulators waiting for them. They try to run, but are quickly captured. Hearing the commotion outside, another one of Nate's friends opens the door, and he is instantly shot in the stomach and collapses to the ground. Nate scrambles and drags him inside, but his friend quickly bleeds out in his arms. Now, with confirmation that Champion is there, all hell breaks loose as the gunmen begin firing into windows. Nate fires back and takes out a few attackers, but the barrage of bullets becomes too much, and he is forced back into one of the rooms. Keeping himself close to the floor, Nate scribbles down the names of some of the attackers he had seen outside. Wolcott's regulators besieged the cabin for the entire day, but Nate was still alive inside and had not given up.
How?
The adrenaline.
No, not even that. How has he not been shot? How's it not, like...
Because he was dragged to one of the rooms.
I know, but that's crazy. But why don't, like, they all just... I mean, I understand they don't want to die, but why don't they all just rush him?
I mean, they can just enter the house, but they're still afraid.
Even
That's
worse,
fair.
Champion had killed 4 regulators and injured many more. The
Damn.
sun
See?
begins to set, and in frustration, the mob decides to set the entire home on fire and be done with it. Champion, now choking on the smoke, writes a final note in his journal. The house is all fired. Goodbye, boys, if I never see you again. He tucks the journal into his pocket, grabs a revolver in one hand and a rifle in the other. He charges out the back door and opens fire on the mercenaries in a final blaze of glory, but he is immediately hit by 28 bullets. The next
Damn.
morning, neighbors discover Nate's
That's some Red Dead Redemption type shit. Holy moly.
28 bullets. Imagine being so, like, dope and strong that you have, like, people, like, just, like, firing at you. And, like,
Yeah, that reminds me.
days to, like, kill you. Like, afraid to, like, go into the house and divide themselves and being killed.
Yeah, in the at the end of Red Dead, spoilers, at the end of Red Dead Redemption, the first game, you're like in this barn and you tell your family to leave,
Mhm.
and then John opens the door and he takes out like 15, 10 of the Pinkertons, but then they all end up shooting him. It's just like, it's crazy.
Body with a note pinned to his chest: "Cattle thieves beware." Wolcott's wish had finally come true. Champion was dead, and he hoped things would soon be returning back to normal. But what he did not know was that a man who had watched Nate Champion's last stand had set out to the nearby town of Buffalo for help. He tells the sheriff there, a man named Angus, who was a supporter of the Homesteaders, what had happened, and immediately they go out into town and gather a posse of 200 men, most of whom were
Damn.
veterans of the American Civil War. By the end of the day, this posse had ridden back into town with the goal of finally bringing Wolcott and his men to justice. Having
Almost
stayed
started
up all
second
night
Civil
dealing with
War.
Champion,
Huh?
Almost started a second Civil War.
No,
for the
really,
whole
though.
thing.
Wolcott and his thugs were completely exhausted, but they soon find themselves on the run from Sheriff Angus and are forced into hiding in a nearby barn. Raiders open fire on the sheriff's men, but this time they weren't fighting homesteaders, they were fighting Civil War vets who had no problems returning the favor. A
Yeah,
local gun store
guys are
owner who was
trained.
also sick of the WSGA corruption hears the battle going on and brings some high-powered rifles to the standoff. The vets happily use them to punch holes into the barn. The siege drags on, and realizing they are outgunned, some of the regulators try to make a run for it, but the sheriff's men open fire and force them back inside. A lone cattle baron
was
escapes
that?
into the sheriff's men open fire and
They're
force them back
dancing.
inside. A lone cattle baron escapes into the woods and manages to get a message to the governor, who contacts Washington, D.C. Two
What?
Wyoming senators personally go to the White House and wake President Benjamin Harrison in the middle of the night to tell him there's a dangerous insurrection brewing in Johnson County, and soon the 6th Cavalry is sent in to put an end to the fighting. Sheriff Angus agrees to call off his men, with the understanding that the military will bring Wolcott and his thugs to justice. This should be an open and shut case, as in the barn, the cavalry finds dozens of weapons, over 5,000 rounds of ammunition, and Wolcott's
Holy
handwritten
moly.
hit list complete with listed bounties paid for each homesteader they killed. But, as strong as the evidence was, the local judicial system was already paid off by the cattle barons, and not
Mother
one of the regulators were sentenced. Wolcott himself never faced any jail time, and actually went on to become a justice of the peace. Go figure. Now, it may seem like corruption still ended up winning, and the homesteaders lost the War of Johnson County, but here's the thing. The shootout at the barn against Sheriff Angus and his posse was enough to spook the wealthy ranchers in the area so badly that soon many of them, including Wolcott, left Wyoming forever. With its membership diminished and so many of its leaders gone, the WSGA opened its doors to the very homesteaders it had been terrorizing, and the organization was completely reformed. It no longer served the interests of just a handful of elites, but instead, it was transformed into a true association of ranchers that represented and defended the interests of all cattlemen in Wyoming.
Not a bad ending.
Thanks again to War Thunder for helping us make this
Okay.
video. Don't forget to play.
I mean, they didn't face the consequences, but at least the homesteaders are living.
Yeah, at least
Okay.
they have their peace.
Mhm.
Well, that is serious history with when corruption pushed people too far in history.
From serious history.
I said that already.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
Well, you guys have a fantastical day. I will see you guys in
I
tomorrow.
don't know, tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Give some comments of other videos that we can react to.
Yeah.
Like quizzes, because someone doesn't want to do quizzes. Or
I
something.
watch videos to enjoy them, not to think about it.
If he sees a lot of comments about it, he'll probably do it.
We can do a would you rather.
Okay.
Okay. But you guys have a fantastical day, and we'll see you guys in the next time. Peace.